Come on. And welcome back to another exciting adventure on the energy that surrounds us. I'm your host, Michael, and tonight's guest is a gentleman who I've had the privilege to investigate with on a few occasions, and he is a great inspiration and a great leader of events when he's hosting. I could sit here and say all kinds of positives, but
yeah, keep saying
it. He is, and he's an author as well, and is very knowledgeable, writes great books, and is a great speaker. If you ever get a chance to see him speak, I highly suggest taking that opportunity. And he has a wonderful title that he, I'm thinking gave to himself, but
oh wow,
it's earned. He is the Paranormal Detective. And before I turn it over to you to talk about yourself a little bit, I want to take a moment and say thank you for your service, both, I believe, military and law enforcement. So thank you for your service and sacrifice.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
And for those who may not be familiar with who the Paranormal Detective is, why don't you give a little bit of your background?
All right. So no, I did not give myself that moniker there. It was crazy. So I had written a book a few years ago. I think it was Detecting Paranormal. And I got pulled on to Coast to Coast, and I did an interview on Coast to Coast. And while we were doing the interview, the host at the time introduced me. He said, "We're back with Greg Lawson, the Paranormal Detective," and he blah blah blah. He goes on. So it kind of hit there when you're called the Paranormal Detective on Coast to Coast. Yeah, you just say Roger that and thanks a lot, and you move on with it. And it seemed to fit because that's what a lot of people would then go to my website. And the whole thing started just, I'll give you a whole recap of my entire life, which will take a second. But my brother used to torture me as a child. He was 12 years older than me. So when I was 5, he was 17, and he would take me on his motorcycle and we'd go riding around, and we would look for abandoned buildings and graveyards and stuff like that. And he would take me into the graveyards and try to find children buried in the graveyard that was younger than me, and he would tell some horrific story and say, yeah, and he's in there rotting in the ground, and you're out here, and he was younger than you, just harassing me a lot. So I kind of grew up doing that with my friends all through elementary, junior high, and in high school when we were doing ghost hunting back then, but we didn't know what it was. We were, going to cemeteries, going to abandoned buildings, and and experimenting with, more 17th, 18th century kind of spirituality than ghost, the way we could do ghost hunting today. And then I ended up going into the Army. And when I was deployed, I had the fortunate chance to be with the 82nd Airborne Division. So that's a rapid deployment unit for the Army. So you don't know where you're going to be in any 24-hour period. You could, be in North Carolina one day and Egypt the next day, or whatever. And so whenever we would deploy, I would go to these places. They were called libraries, and these library places had these things called books, and you looked stuff up. And so you'd go, I'm going to Honduras. What's Honduras all about? So you go to the library and you check out something, or you look at the Encyclopedia Britannica. It was the book of all knowledge. And you look up, and I would always look for the weird stuff. So whenever I was deployed someplace, I was pretty much prepared that when I had time off, that's the first thing I would do. A lot of people in the military, head straight to the bar and just spend their whole time at the bar. But I typically was with the indigenous population, out probably where I shouldn't have been, and looking at the weirdness the world had to offer. And so I did that. I spent 10 years military and 32 years law enforcement. So I always had this paranormal side. Whenever the weirdness would happen, I would always, view it through two lenses. For me, if I get called to, let's say, a grand jury to do a deposition at a grand jury, I need to be spot on with what I'm doing. I can't fuzz this line of reality perception in best practices and accepted procedures to woo-woo stuff of candles and EMF detectors and doing stuff like that. I have to really draw a line in the sand and make sure that that line does not get crossed, and ensure that whenever I do end up testifying, I delineate very much that, yes, I do research into paranormal experience and legends, but the other side, on the law enforcement side, I have to kind of toe the line on that. So that's kind of where I went. I worked mental health in Austin back in 1987 to 1989. When I mean mental health, I got out of the Army in 86, and I went to work for the sheriff's office in Austin, Texas. And in 1987, I got pulled off patrol and assigned as a mental health investigator because they had done dehospitalization of the mental health facilities in state schools. At that time, they had passed legislature and kicked everybody out that wasn't an immediate danger to themselves or others. So we had this huge influx of mentally ill people put onto the street. And so they created what's called the mental health unit. And we get certified as mental health officers and hostage negotiators, suicide mediators. And we're assigned to a part of a critical incident team that goes to locations that, is a hostage situation, or it could be just somebody experiencing psychosis. And we would go there and figure out what's going on. Well, that in and of itself lended me the credentials to actually go and investigate people that are saying they've been abducted by aliens, that they've been, experiencing demons, having hauntings and all kinds of stuff. Because it was truly crazy from 87 to like probably 90 on the streets of Austin with the mentally ill, and they got it kind of under wraps, and now it's horrible again. It's absolutely out of control now. It's 20 times as worse now than it was back then. So that's kind of where I went, and then I just kind of landed on Coast to Coast after I wrote a couple of books about it.
No, it's really cool. And normally I would be like, with your military background, where you were, did you experience any paranormal activity on the base, but you're like, you were out there searching for it anyway. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like you kind of were like seeking it. So what did it happen on the base at all, or was it always
So
outside of?
yeah, so at Fort Bragg, the whole time that I spent with the 82nd Airborne Division, I was literally at Fort Bragg only 7 months. I was deployed all the rest of the time. I also served up in Alaska. I was a cold weather indoctrination instructor, and I was with an airborne unit up in Alaska. That was life changing being in Alaska. You know, being a kid from Texas, when I signed my contract, they're like, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to jump out of airplanes and break stuff. I don't know." And they're like, "Well, we got a job for you. You know, you get a guarantee. Where do you want to go? You can fill out your dream sheet." I was like, "Oh, I want to go to, let's see, Panama, Hawaii, and Italy. That'd be great." Yeah, they sent me to Alaska. That was great. typical Army, right? And I was mad, man. I was super mad. And I got up there, and it was amazing. My experience in Alaska was amazing. I think that my experience, had I gone to Panama, would have been amazing. I think had I gone to Italy, it would have been amazing. Hawaii, it would have been amazing. I have an affinity for just all things that are happening and why they're happening, and everything from the smallest little bug to, you know, the possibilities of hauntings and that sort of stuff. In Alaska, the Aleut and Inuit peoples up there, you know, people just kind of go, "Oh, the Eskimos up there." It's like, yeah, there's a whole bunch of different tribes.
Yeah.
They're kind of grouped into as like, it's like saying an American Indian. Well, there's, you know, I don't know, hundreds of different tribes, and they self-identify. And that it's that way in Alaska and in Canada. And the legends and belief systems that they have are fascinating. And you look at it and you go, okay, all right, so you believe in tornants, or you know, like a Sasquatch, hairy men type thing. And you know, when you're out on the tundra and you're looking across the tundra there, and you see somebody walking across there in a big heavy overcoat and everything that's all hairy and everything, looks like a big hairy man. So could it be a big hairy man? Yeah. Or could it be just somebody in, you know, a native type garment that has a lot of hair on it? It was fascinating to me. A friend of mine and a guy that I served with, we were up at a place called Greeley. And I'm trying to think, Black Rapids in the Greeley area. It's a Northern Warfare test bed. So they have a bunch of stuff up there. And we were doing a company maneuver up there with another 100 something people. And then it was time for us to go back. Well, I was assigned at that time to a gamma goat. A gamma goat, you have to look it up online and see a picture of this thing. It's a 6-wheeled vehicle that specializes in mud and snow and that sort of stuff. And my gamma goat had a 4-cylinder Detroit diesel engine that had a governor on it, and the governor was broken. So it would only go about 10 miles an hour. Well, this whole convoy is going to head back 300 something miles to Anchorage. And I couldn't keep up with the convoy. So my lieutenant said, "Hey, you know, get there when you get there. You know, if you get someplace, give the company a CQ a call, tell them where you are, you know, check in daily." And all right. Well, they took off, and I fixed the governor. And me and this kid, we drove all over the place on these back roads and went all over the place with this gamma goat. We ended up at a little Aleut village, a little Indian village. And we got there and we needed fuel. And I was trying to, they don't have a gas station. It's all run by the tribe. Right. So I go and I talk to some people, and they're like, "Oh, we'll talk to who would be the chief." I forget what they called him. And he said, "Yes, we'll give you fuel tomorrow." I said, "Well, we really need it." No, tomorrow. But we're trying to, he said, "We'll give you fuel tomorrow."
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. Well, they had a potlatch for us that night. a big party. The whole village came out. There's 100 something people. And, they had us talk about what we do and where we were and where we're from, and just tell their little village, a kid from Georgia and a kid from Texas, and how we got to Alaska, and told them all about our vehicle, and just did all this stuff. And they gave us presents, and we had a little they had a party, and we had some I ate moose that night. I had never had moose before. And then they told us some stories, about the hairy men, about these creatures that are along the shore of rivers and stuff, that come and get children and drown the children, and just all kinds of amazing stories. And you look at it and you go, okay, like with I forget what this creature is that comes out of the water and gets children. They tell the kids that. It makes sense to me that so the kids won't get near the water and fall in the water and drown, right? I mean, right. That's a good deterrent. But the thing that really, the one story that really stuck with me was of the hairy men, or the Tornets. And their story is the humans that were there and the hairy men used to trade together. They would meet once or twice a summer, and they would trade things. And they actually had this little bartering kind of relationship. The hairy men did not speak their language. They didn't speak the hairy men's language, but they were respectful of one another. Until one of the younger teenage hairy men stole one of the Akios of them. It's like a little sled, right? And the human killed this kid, this hairy teenager. And that is when the relationship was severed, and the hairy people went off into the wilderness and were never seen again. They decided they were going to separate from humans altogether. And that's why today that they no longer relate. And so you hear these stories and you think about how a lot of these legends absolutely make sense. And you look at things like, oh, well, there's no such thing as giant sea monsters until you find a giant squid, in the 1970s, and you go, oh, well, yeah, there is. And all these stories that these sailors had of these giant squid attacking their ships is true. Up until that time, it was complete fallacy. It was complete legend, but it's not. And so I think like with Alaska, there's so many stories about Sasquatch, and throughout North America, throughout Asia, throughout most continents. Obviously there's something to this thing. It could have been born way back when, Neanderthals were running around. Of course, they weren't 7 feet tall. But and those are the kind of things that fascinate me, that make me want to take deeper dives and spend a little bit of money and go to these different locations and look stuff up. So to answer your question, I just spent 19 minutes talking about that. To answer your question, I never had any experiences at Fort Bragg in any of the military bases, but I think it was because I was so busy. When I wrote the book, Messages from Mothman, a lot of people would come by and they go, oh, I love Mothman. Here, let me get the book. I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. There's like 7 pages talking about Mothman in there. This is very much more about exploring premonition and what all of this means, because a lot of people believe that Mothman, was trying to send us premonitions that the bridge was going to collapse and all that. And what is this all about? And so I personally just choose to pay attention to when these stories are and not just put them away. But as you know, when you're working day to day and you're having to hurry up and, you get up late, you got to hurry up and take a shower and brush your teeth and get going and get to work. And then something happens at work and you get half a lunch and your day goes like that. You're missing all of the little red flags that are popping up all around you of what could possibly be paranormal. So I think whenever I was at Fort Rich or Fort Bragg, I was so busy, I wasn't paying any attention to that stuff. However, when we would deploy, I was in Honduras, I was in El Salvador, San Salvador, in Guatemala, in Panama, Alaska, Egypt, Chad, and Sudan. I spent the most amount of my time overseas in those places. And, once you get there and once you decompress a little bit and you have a little bit of time and you start paying attention, people ask me if I've seen anything. I can't say that I've really seen anything. My experiences are much more metaphysical. They're much more a feeling, a gut feeling, an eeriness. I wouldn't say words telling me to do something, but I just get this,
like a gut feeling.
Yeah. An emotion that's like, wow, something's happening. I don't know what it is, but something's happening. So that's really the kind of my experience with the paranormal is more metaphysical.
No, I think that's a deeper connection. And, as you mentioned, being in Alaska and all your experiences there, I was wondering if you knew at the time or if you know now, do you want to go back to Alaska to experience the triangle?
I would go back right now. Like if my wife was like, okay, just go, dude, I would knock over this table and I would be gone. I would go right now. I'm actually working on a project up in the triangle. I'm not obviously not up there, but I'm putting together, I've already put together the operations plan and all that stuff. There was a plane that went missing back in the early 1950s. And I'm almost positive I know where it is. They've been looking for it and they've done a couple of documentaries on it and they haven't been able to find it. But I used to work search and rescue for the Navy. So when we're talking about, I have what's called Armed Forces Attention Deficit Disorder. I did 4 years Army, 4 years Navy, and 2 years Air Force. So people are like, why'd you do that? I'm like, I had an interest in it. I wanted to go do it and just went and did it. I didn't have any other plan at the time. So when I was in the Navy, I went through a couple of different schools for search and rescue. And I was with a pararescue unit when I was in Alaska as well. It's it's called ASAP, Arctic Subarctic Aquatic Pararescue. And so using some of the planning techniques and that sort of stuff, looking at this missing plane, had 42 people on it, and it flew out of Anchorage and they never saw it again. It's a big plane. And
you're talking about the one that had the senator on it, wasn't it? Or congressman?
This one did not. No, this is in the 1950s. Yeah. The last radio transmission was that they put out was in Snag, Yukon. It's right on the border of Alaska and Canada. And so I'm very interested in trying to get up there. I need about $30,000 to kind of just do a recon and see if my idea is correct. So I'm trying to raise some money on that. And I'm trying to get some angel donors to do that. But I think that it would serve everybody's purpose if I can get. So yeah, to go back to Alaska in a second. I worked on a thing up in Portlock. We were it was right in the summertime, which was like not really summertime, but it was in August, July or August. And I ended up getting sent to the MWR, the Morale, Welfare, and Recreation Center down in Seward. If you did good things or whatever at your unit, every once in a while they would, reward somebody and send them to Seward. And it was you can go down there, spend the weekend, didn't have to go to work, and you got to go fishing or hiking around or whatever. And I talked to a couple of young Coast Guard men that were running the fishing fleet out of there. They were assigned to MWR as pilots for the fishing boats. They were like 32-foot Bertram style cabin cruisers. And anyway, I talked these two guys into taking me all the way over to Portlock, which was a long ride. It was almost 6 hours to get over there. And we went ashore for about an hour and a half where Bigfoot supposedly killed 7 people, and the whole village ended up packing up and leaving. You can go to the Anchorage Daily Times or whatever the thing is and look up Portlock or Port Chatham and the Sasquatch of Port Chatham. And so anyway, we went there, and there were a couple of buildings still standing. I think there's maybe one building still standing if you look online there, and it was a cannery. And so we went there, we walked around, and I can assure you that was one of the creepiest places I've ever been. But it wasn't because I was worried about Sasquatch. There was so much bear scat there that it was, man, don't mess around with the grizzlies up there. And it was everywhere. There's trails everywhere where these bear go through, and they go up into the river right there and fish for salmon.
So I wonder, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, it's good.
I was wondering, because like you were talking about, when you're on the tundra, the indigenous could look like Bigfoot. Could a bear, if they're striking on their back 2 legs, could a witness say, "Oh my God, it was a Bigfoot, but it was a bear"?
Yeah, and the way that could happen is there's so much undergrowth, so that the growing season in around there is probably 3.5 months, something like that, and everything goes dormant again. So a lot of the trees are very old, the bushes are very old, but they're very small. So if you get into an area that has a lot of undergrowth, and let's say a bear, I've seen this before where a bear has a hurt front paw, and they will walk on their hind legs, and they'll walk a long way, and then they'll kind of flop down, rest a second, and then stand back up and walk some more. And so very much so, if you had undergrowth and it's at dusk and it's 100 yards away and he's cruising through the woods, absolutely. On the tundra, I don't think you would, or in a clear area, because bears' back legs are too short, and they're very, very different than coin the bipedal hominid kind of looking thing that has really long legs is very different.
All right. Okay, and we actually have a question in the chat room. At Surface Planet Radio 8806 is asking, is there an underground in Mount Hayes?
Man, I wish if I knew that for sure, I would definitely make some money off of that one. I do not know. I've heard people talk about it, but about Mount Hayes, but I don't know anything about it. I wish I did.
Yeah, and as you're talking about, going and checking out some stuff in Alaska, I wonder, have you heard about, and I'm not sure if it's Mount Hayes or which mountain it's in, but there is supposedly a black pyramid upside down in the Alaska Triangle.
Right.
So is that on your radar? Or are you like, nope, that's too far for me?
No. I like all that stuff. I talked to a lot of different people about that area. The problem is, like, the area that I need to go to for this aircraft, it's 1,000 miles from Seattle. It's way up there, dude. People don't start thinking, it's like, how wide the United States is. Well, make that go north to, from Seattle. That's how high up this area is. So to actually get up in those areas, is so prohibitively expensive. Either in gas, if you're taking I drove the Alcan Highway from Anchorage up to Fairbanks and then back down through Canada and all the way to North Carolina. So I drove the whole thing when I got transferred from Alaska to Fort Bragg. But I mean, you're just driving all the way through. And so whenever I look at doing stuff in Alaska, I look at kind of the things that I missed while I was there. I would like to go back to those same places, knowing what I know now, and have a little bit of time and try to look at things that are different. I would love to go to Portlock. We were going to go to Portlock right before COVID. And I got the permits and everything to go on the property because it's now run by all that whole area, all the natural area has been turned back over to the indigenous population in Alaska, which is great. And it sucks as well. It's great because they're not going to destroy it. It sucks because white people can't get on there anymore without going through some big permitting stuff. So I did all the permitting and everything. And then there was a TV show called Alaska Killer Bigfoot. And they did the TV show there at Portlock, and they got some relatives of people that actually lived there in the 1950s and were supposedly part of the group of people that fled there when this Bigfoot was killing everybody. And they did not reflect well on Alaska, on that area, or on the tribe. And the tribe pulled my permits, pulled everybody else's permits, shut everything down. And the I forget what his title is. He's like a chief, but he's not. They actually have, it's like a constable, but that's not the word. It's chairman.
Like an elder.
Yeah, it's like an elder. But it's actually a government official title in Alaska. And he was really cool. He just said, Greg, listen, man, wait 3 or 4 years, give us a call back. All this should blow over. And, maybe you can go back out there then. That whole area is really fascinating to me. That's where I would want to go back. I would want to go back to Old Harbor and place called Sitkaladak Island and Refuge Rock. There was a massacre that happened there of Aleut people. They got ran off into Refuge Rock by a bunch of Russian fur traders. And this Refuge Rock is like, it's offshore, and you could get up on top of it, and it's really hard to attack, but they didn't understand what cannon was. So these Russians took their ships on either side of the island and bracketed artillery fire in and killed anywhere from 200 to 2,000 of the villagers there. And I went out there. That would have been 1984, I guess. And I didn't actually get on the island. You can't get on the island now. Now it's a World Heritage Site. They've actually made it a UNESCO site. So you can't even get on there anymore. But that was fascinating. That was that was like 1780s, 1790s when that happened.
So you might actually be my perfect guest to ask this question, because when I've asked it before, the answer kind of goes over their head. But you saying, like, you being metaphysical background, when you were there, was the energy like super thick, like you knew something traumatic happened, or was it
at Refuge Rock?
Yeah.
I had my most profound experience I've ever had in my life there. So I was at Kodiak Island at the time. I was going through a a Coast Guard water insertion school. We do insertion by helicopter for pararescue. And so all the people on or some of the people on my team, the ASAP team, we were doing extractions and insertions with a helicopter there. And so I had been in that water for 2 weeks. And, you know, it was kind of a gentleman's school. They ran us pretty hard, but it was pretty much of a gentleman's school, to where we had off in the evening and, you know, you could go into town and eat and take a shower and do normal stuff. And so I went to the, Kodiak Historical Society. They have a Russian historical society there. And, cause all that area was all occupied by Russians back in the 16th, 17th century. And so I went there and I did a bunch of reading and I read, and there was this, he was a Dutch anthropologist that actually discovered what happened at Refuge Rock. He was there in, like I said, in the late 1700s, and interviewed some of the people that witnessed, the massacre and some of the people that survived the massacre. And he wrote about this, and it's at the Historical Society. So I read all about this, and it was just fascinating to me. I was like, oh my God, that's just amazing. So we finished, we graduated our little school Friday afternoon. And I immediately got all my stuff together, and I didn't have to be back to Fort Richardson until Monday morning. So I went straight over to the Kodiak airport, and I got a Kodiak, an Alaskan Uber, which is the least drunk guy at the airport, and pay him $20 and he'll take you someplace in his airplane. Right. And so they took me to Old Harbor, dropped me off there, and it's like, all right, well, go into town that way. And so I'm just walking down this road. I'm all by myself. I'm like 20 years old, right? I don't know anything. And I'm walking down this road, and I'm just walking and walking and walking. And I walk around the corner, and there is a Russian Orthodox church, a big blue Russian Orthodox church, just in the woods right there. I'm like, what in the hell is that? And then a little further, you could see the village. I went down there and I stayed at the Bates Motel. They have a Bates Motel there. I guess it looked like the Bates Motel. And I went down and I talked to some of the fishermen that do, there's a whole bunch of tourist stuff that they do, and they go like fishing charter kind of thing. They don't do a whole bunch, but there were some there. And I talked to them, and they had a charter going out the next morning. I said, can I go with you guys? And you guys drop me off at Sikaladak Island. And the guy was like, he's looking at me, big grizzly guy, you know, and I'm this skinny, you know, or young 20-year-old kid. He's looking at me. He goes, do you have a gun? And I was like, no, not with me. He goes, and you're going to go on Sikaladak Island without a gun? And I'm like, yeah, man, I can swim. I can, you know, the bears come after me. He goes, the bears swim too, but I'll give you a ride if that's what you want. So I can't remember. I had like $120 in my name or something. And so I paid him like $30 or something. I got up real early that morning, and then we went across. He dropped me off of the island. I had to walk about 5 miles to the other side of the island, and the island's actually split. And in the middle, there's this sand spit between the two of Sikaladak Island. And right off of that sand spit is Refuge Rock. And I get there, you know, I walk, and I get there. And I to this day, I cannot explain my feeling about when I got there. I'm looking around, and I noticed that it's like behind me, it looks like there was a quarry on part of the island where the sand is, right? And the dirt and the sand. It looks like somebody has dug out there. Well, I started looking in the water, and it was, there's land under the water at that time with the tide tables. The tide tables are very high out there. So when they're really low, you can see land underneath it. But it looks like to me that the indigenous people actually moved that sand and those rocks and stuff and built an underwater bridge all the way out to to Refuge Rock, which would make sense if you're talking about we're going to go here if we get attacked. If our village gets attacked, that's where we're going. And you can see it. You can go on Google Earth and look up Refuge Rock, and you can see that land going out there. It's unusual looking. Anyway, well, we'll get to the metaphysical part. I can't say I was told. I just knew I was supposed to go to the rock. And I had been in the water this whole week. Now I had dry suits on at the time, but we did do some without dry suits and some with wetsuits. So I'm looking at it and it looked like it was about 300 yards to me. And I was like, I can make that. I can do that without a wetsuit. I can do that. And so I started walking out there and I got up to about my waist and I started thinking about where I am, what's going on. The waves weren't really big. The waves were maybe a foot, but it's kind of splashing around, splashing my face a little bit. And I lost my nerve, man. I couldn't do it. And I turned around and I went back to the sand. And I know I was supposed to go out there. I can't tell you why or what the purpose was or anything, but I believe that it was some sort of test for me that I failed. And I went back to the little spit of sand and I got behind that little wall where they dug that stuff out, and I made a little fire and I dried out some of my clothes and kind of sat there and looked at the island. But I know they wanted me there. And I don't know how else to explain it, man. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting, but I have a different perspective for you. Maybe your test was because you mentioned like you're not supposed to go to this rock.
Yeah.
And so they were testing, are you going to be the type of person who's going to say, well, culturally they don't want me here, I'm going to do it anyway? Or are you going to be the one that says, culturally they don't want me here, I'm going to honor that? And so maybe, your test was successful.
Maybe.
In that you didn't go where you weren't supposed to go.
Maybe. At that time, it didn't matter. It wasn't a UNESCO site yet.
True, but
you're right. Maybe it's being a sacred site like that, I had no business being there. Maybe that's what it was. I don't know, but
maybe your mission was just to see it from where you were and go, I'm here. I feel what I need to feel. Now I can go home.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in that water. I was like, so the only thing that's really going to hurt you in that water up there is going to be wolffish, could, if you stepped on them or something. Seals. People always look at seals and harbor seals. Oh, look at that cute little. No, they're animals and they will bite your face off. They don't mess around. And then of course you have a lot of orca up there as well. And I was like, wouldn't that be great? I'm out there, by myself, and the fisherman comes back and finds nothing but a backpack. Actually, he wouldn't have found anything because I wouldn't have carried my backpack all the way back over there where he picked me up. No. But yeah, man, that was probably the most prolific thing that I've ever experienced.
The reason I say that is I went to southern France and I was at Rennes-le-Château at the base of it staying, and my roommate and I were going up the hill on the winding path up to the gate, and stuff was rustling in the debris to the side, like the bushes and everything, but never saw anything. And like you're saying, I just got to I was like, I could literally see the stone saying Rennes-le-Château. And I was like, we got to turn around. Something just had me feeling like we had to turn around. And my roommate was like, we're right here. I was like, you don't get it. I got this feeling we need to turn around. So we did. And the next night we were able to go into town, but I felt like you're saying, it was a test
Yeah.
to see, because it's a sacred site, like
Right.
you were at.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
So
But that's what the thing that we have enough stuff, enough tasks, enough jobs, stuff to do, and got a lot of good scientists out there making all kinds of cool stuff for us and figuring things out. And there's just not that many of us that are sticking our noses into the dark and kind of wondering what's going on and, trying to eliminate, is my brain tricking me? Am I tricking myself? Is somebody else tricking me? What is this all about? And my brother, which I don't think he tried real hard to come up with this. But I asked him, I'm like, what is this all about? And he's like, man, life's about, brother was a big hippie. Life's about spending time with the people you care about and having good food and drink. I'm like, well, yeah, but I want to know about this. He goes, you're not supposed to know. You're just not supposed to know. You're not going to know. It's not going to be there. Grandma's not going to completely appear to you and say, I'm watching over you. Everything's going to be fine. I can't wait to see you again. Love you. Bye. It's not going to happen that way. So I just look for those little red flags everywhere that tell me that there's something else happening.
yeah. Or, I could say to your brother, or it's not going to happen to you that way, but it could happen to me.
Right.
But yeah, and I think that's what drives a lot of the paranormal investigators that I've met, and I felt like you were in the category is, there's so many things that are unexplained that we just blindly accept, and it's like, why?
Yep.
Why do we blindly accept? We need to question this. And I noticed, when around you with investigations, you're like, well, okay, yeah, that moved, but why did that move? Was it wind? Was it, someone bumped it? Is the hinge loose? Is the gravity of with the weight of the door causing it to move? You're looking at everything and not just going, hey, the door moved. Really cool. I'm glad I got that footage, and now I can go say I've seen a door move by itself.
Yeah.
Must have been a
I
ghost.
I get people say, oh, well, you're a debunker. And it's like, I'm not a debunker. What I do is I eliminate all the naturally occurring things that could have happened and leave that empty hole. And if there's an empty hole left, that's paranormal. I cannot explain that. And I don't fault people that give very detailed explanations on how a ghost does this or does that. That's their belief. But there's no proof of what what people will say in a lot of the stuff. It falls very much into a belief system. And that's where, I'm very interested because I love the folks that's like, yeah, we use the scientific method to do X, Y, and Z in the paranormal. It's like, no, you don't. Scientific method is based on repeatability, period. And nothing in the paranormal repeats itself. It's always transitioning. It's always morphing into something else. And we would have to study something really super hard, 24 hours a day for years to really see if there's any kind of repeatability, let's say on the person's birthday or on the dead person's birthday or on the dead person's day that they were killed or, some other major event that there's this energy that happens and causes it. But I think a lot of times us, I think we're big lures and we attract things, and some people, ghosts are attracted to some people and ghosts are repelled by some people. So it's just like in life.
I have a feeling when I talk to people about, why some people get experiences the way they get, is the spirits are able to see us and in a way that we don't see ourselves because they're in a different plane. And so they can literally look at you and go, you are genuine. You want to know. We're going to interact with you. And if you walk up and you're like, you're here for 15 seconds of fame, you don't really care. They're like, why should we waste our time and energy on you?
Right.
Let's focus on the other person.
I was with John Tenney at oh God, where were we? Mackinac Island up in Michigan, and we were we were in a big building that they used as a movie set for Beyond Time. What is that movie? It's got Christopher Reeves in it. Another
Somewhere in Time.
Somewhere in Time. We were there, and we had a group of like, I don't know, I think it was maybe 14 people. And it was really interesting. That's the first time I had ever done it this way, but you have 14 people. They're all different. You got two old white guys. You got a couple of young white guys. You got a lot of some Hispanic females, white females. And we were all asking the same question. We formed a circle, and then we all asked the same question, and we did it. And we did an EVP session during it. And just to see, because, maybe the spirits don't want to talk to the old white guy, you go to some up in Virginia or someplace and go to some slave quarters, and you're sitting there trying to communicate with the dead. Well, maybe they don't want to talk to you, Yeah. And so it's an interesting experiment to have other people ask the exact same question in as pretty much the same way that they can ask it, and then do an EVP session and do a good 30 to 60 second pause between each person to see what comes up between those pauses, if anything comes up. For us, it was really weird when we did it. I'm sitting there and I'm watching everybody, and we did it, right? Went all the way around. Everybody did it. It was, I can't remember if it was 13 or 14 people. But when we played it back, there were 14 or 15 voices asking the same question. So it was like somebody sat down with us and joined us and played the game and asked the question. And everybody was like, wait, no, it started with Tenny and it went all the way around and it stopped right there. But somebody else asked a question in there. Who was that? And I don't know what happened. Don't have a clue what happened. Amazing.
Yeah. And there are so many interesting techniques that are out now. And I'm just curious, with your background with the military and law enforcement, what techniques do you really like to get behind and be like, yeah, I'd like to see more investigators use these techniques because they're the closest undeniable that we can get?
Yeah. So whenever I do real investigations, I do it completely alone. I don't do it with anybody else. And it's because other people distract me. They make noises, they ask questions, they're doing stuff. I mean, I will go with groups like when we do like events and we're going with different groups, and I'm going with different people. That's fun. And I try to make suggestions along the way if they're open to it. But that's one of the things is, I think a lot of people go, hey, I'm going to go to Haunted Hill House this weekend, and I'm going to do EVP, and EVP work. So they get all their recorders and everything, and they go up, and let's say there's construction going on at the house next door, and there's hammering, bam, 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 bam. And by God, they're going to do EVP work. They don't care. And they force it into it. And then, it's like, okay, yeah, listen to this EVP. I said, if there's anybody there, please give me a sign. Bam, 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 bam. Like, oh, did you hear him knocking? It's like, no, it's the next door people working on the house next door. It's not what that was. Now I'm giving Haunted Hill House as an example just because I just picked that. That's not what happened in Haunted Hill House. But I see investigators force their technique into the environment instead of going and assessing the environment and saying, what would be the best experiment I could do here? What would be the best observation that I could make here, given the circumstances? And then using whatever it is at that time. Like in a case, I was at a Belvoir Winery. I give this example. I'm there as a guest investigator. People are signing up to come and investigate, and they're paying to come investigate. And we had a group of ghost hunters escorting people through. Well, when they came over to me, I was going to do my thing, and this group of ghost hunters like, "Oh, we're here all the time. We're going to do EVP work." And I'm like, "Well, there's some kids over here playing basketball and blah, blah, blah." And they're like, "Well, this is what we do." And so, okay, come on, let's do it. And I'm just standing there going, I thought they were paying me to do this, but if you don't want me to do anything, I'm good. So, I have one of the cheapest little K2 meters that you can get. It was like $14 from China, and it's amazing. And so I just turned it on and I set it on the ground. And as people are coming by me, I'm monitoring them, right? I'm watching what they're doing, trying to watch what ghosts are doing, right? Well, half of them have their phones not on airplane mode. They should be shut off because the airplane mode still leaches out some EMF. And so people are walking by me, and my little K2 meter is going off because it's picking up their phone. It picks up just about anything. It's really super sensitive. And so I stop everybody. I'm like, all right, well, before you all go, everybody pull your phones out. Let's turn them off. A couple of people didn't want to turn them off because they were running ghost apps and they wanted to do something. I'm like, you understand your ghost app is a computer program? They're like, yeah, of course. Okay. So some guy wearing a tinfoil hat in his grandma's basement is telling you what is happening. He's writing the code to interpret what the sensors on your phone are picking up. This is not analog. Analog is going to be something that's real. Digital is it's code. They've written the code, and it's that software is interpreting what the sensors on your phone are picking up. And so they didn't want to hear that. I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to sit over here. And sure enough, man, they're doing an EVP session, and I hear it. Kids are playing basketball down the street. And it's, when I say down the street, it's probably 400 yards from us. But it's nighttime, and that sound is traveling really good. And sure enough, man, can you give us a sign? On the, did you hear that? Did you hear that? They're like, oh my God. I'm just sitting there going, oh no, yeah, that's great. That's cool. And I don't know what else to say. So if I could influence anybody, I would say, bring your equipment. When you get there, do a little reconnaissance of the surroundings, what's going on, measure the EMF that's in the area with a K2, like checking ballast on lights and walls and all that stuff, and identify all that stuff and try to clean the area as best you can before you actually do anything. And of course, you could argue with me on that. Well, just by doing that, you're disrupting EMF by going in there. Like, yeah. You could send in a psychic first, send in an intuitive first, and let them spend 30 minutes in there, then come out, then you clean the place. And then you set up whatever experiment that would be best effective given the environment. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I just noticed we're like a couple minutes from the hour. I don't know if you, with your work, do you need to leave, or do you have time for a few more questions?
Yeah, I have time.
Okay. I respect what you do, and so didn't want to.
I need to go, but I mean, I don't need to go, but yeah.
Okay.
I have a behavior modification unit that expects me to dinner, so that would be my wife.
Wow, and I just got a frog in my throat. I was going to say happy wife, happy life, and
yeah, that's right.
My throat did not want to say it.
That's true.
But so I'm curious, with like you're saying, doing events, I view them as scouting
Mhm.
investigations. Like, do you feel something and you're like, okay, I'll make a plan to come back?
Right.
Have you ever been on an event and you're like, you just get this feeling it's not like you're saying, it's not on equipment, it's not anyone's experience. You're just like, something was here that everybody missed. I need to go back to this spot.
Yeah, Haunted Hill House is very much like that for me. And that's probably the creepiest place. Lynn and I have been all over the place and been to some pretty amazing places, but Haunted Hill House is the most disturbing place I've been. And I've been back twice since then. And it's dude, I don't know what's going on there, but I was one of the first people that investigated it when they first bought it, and they gave me a call and asked me if I would come up and do it. And I said, yeah, I'll do it, but you have to give me the house for 24 hours by myself and nobody can be there. And that was before they fixed it up. Now it's kind of, decorated and it's got dolls and weird stuff in it and all that.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's definitely one of the places. Warwick Castle, uh, uh, over in England is another place that William the Conqueror started, built a wall there in a siege tower. So it has incredible history, along with Corvin Castle, or it's also called Hunadora Castle in Romania. Just you go to those places, and I mean, there's places in the United States too, that have some really strange feelings about them, but those are places I've been back to Warwick a couple of times. I have not been back to Hunadora. I probably will never go back there. I would like to, but it's just, expensive and all that. And, but yeah, you get those feelings, and that's a really good way, man. I'm gonna steal that idea from you. Actually, I'll reference you on it. But I see people that go on these ghost hunts, and you'll see the husbands that get drug along, and they're just like, oh God, everybody's talking all this. No, it's all bullshit. And you go, man, this is a scouting mission. This is something. Would you like to come back here just by yourself, just you and your wife to come back? Or you could take her back with a friend or whatever, drop her off, and you could go to the bar and then go pick them up afterwards. But I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah. Very cool. And Paulo Woolwine, she has a question for you.
Hey.
Was Tombstone what you expected?
So I've been to Tombstone a couple of times. Let's see. Did she go to the Wild West Paracon, or did she go to the Strange Escapes with Amy Bruni?
She did the Tombstone Paracon. That's
Okay.
all she said.
So the first one went pretty smooth. I think everybody had a pretty good time at the first one. The second one got a little weird. They tried to fit too much stuff in there. And and some people complained about different stuff, and but that wasn't typical of Tombstone. Now, did I expect Tombstone to be so small and just that one road and that's it? I did not. I thought because Tombstone was much, much bigger back in the day. And a lot of it burnt down, and just through the years things fell down and stuff changed.
Yeah.
But
Tombstone
yeah,
is interesting because it has this history to it. But then when you talk to the locals, they're like, well, I know history says it happened here, but it really happened over here. And
right.
everything is slightly askew. And
Everything.
the
Yeah.
big mystery is, Wyatt Earp's house right across the street from the people that wanted to kill him. And it's like, really? Were they really that close? And
Yeah. it's interesting on, and also Boot Hill, they've done a lot of work on Boot Hill trying to figure out what is what. And a lot of those graves were, unmarked for years and years and years, and they had to go back in there and try to figure it out. So maybe some of those are mismarked. Who knows? I think they do a great job. Boot Hill is one of my favorite places on the planet. I love spending an evening at Boot Hill Cemetery. But I think Tombstone has a lot to offer for a nice long weekend. After that, it's like, all right, we're running out of stuff. But the amount of hauntings that people say, Tombstone would keep you busy for weeks. It's pretty amazing. We've been all over. The other cool thing is all the tunnels underneath the town that are now all closed up or whatever. Well, they're not filled up. They're just, the entrances are filled in, but it's all, empty. And there's just crazy amounts of, miles and miles of tunnels underneath there where those guys just dug and just followed those veins of silver. It's pretty amazing. I saw somebody put on, they're talking about the Eureka Springs up there. Yeah. The Crescent Hotel. I did a couple of presentations on the Crescent Hotel, and the history behind that is fascinating. And there's really good physical evidence that they dug up a few years ago on the back side of the property, where that the charlatan that said he was curing cancer was cutting things out of people and everything and putting it in jars, and he buried it all back there, and everybody forgot about it. And then they were going to expand their garden and dug up all that stuff. So they called the university out there to actually do the excavation. And the Crescent, man, you talking about a place that had horrible, horrible things happen there. Lots of death. And it's one of the most amazing hotels. Lynn and I, it's about a 10-hour drive from Austin to go to Eureka Springs, and we'll go up there at least once a year and just stay at the Crescent. And it is great. The Crescent Hotel is amazing.
Yeah. I feel remiss if I wouldn't ask, because we were in Galveston for an event, and, we didn't get a chance to really fully investigate anything. But I'm curious, with you being a Texan, the history of Galveston, what your opinion of it is. Is it really as haunted as they say, or slightly haunted, or?
So if you were going to pick some place, obviously Goliad would be one of the places that would be haunted with the massacre there at Goliad. Obviously the Alamo. I think that Galveston is up there with, if you were going to do a mathematical formula that equaled haunting, this plus this plus this plus this, Goliad would be one of those. The Alamo would be one. Galveston would definitely be one. The horrible craziness that happened in the hurricane in Galveston, especially with the orphanage and the nuns and the children. That all culminated in the Walmart parking lot. Now, you see people when you go to Galveston, you can see people sitting over in the Walmart parking lot. They're doing some EVP work or something, trying to contact the children or whatever. But, it's just horrific. If your listeners haven't ever read about Galveston and the hurricane, man, you talking about a crazy travesty of what happened there, and all those people drowning and all those children drowning. And also looking forward from Galveston, from that time, from the 1900s, to raising that whole island. How could, that was a long time ago. How did they have the technology to raise the island? They actually had huge pumps and sucked that sand out of the bay and pumped sand on top of the island and piled it up. You go to the Kathleen Mecca does ghost tours there, has written a few books. You go to the main cemetery there and you look at the little mausoleums that they have. Well, those mausoleums are really short. They're like 5 feet tall. That's because there's another 7-8 feet of sand that has piled up. And that's all you're seeing of the mausoleum. So they actually had to raise that whole area and then raise the tombstones with it. And it's a pretty amazing place. And those buildings down there on the waterfront where they ended up taking a bunch of the bodies and storing, bodies that were laying around in town there. A bunch of them, obviously, they, sent them offshore and did all that. But yeah, it's crazy, man.
It is. And you
Corporate
bring up an
has a big
interesting
history too.
Yeah, and about the history, you bring up an interesting point that in April I came across because I went to Goliad and the Alamo, and in my mind I remember the battle cry of Texas, remember the Alamo, remember Goliad. And I was always taught Fannin was cowardly, not a really good officer, and
Right.
did Goliad wrong. Well, going to the Alamo first, everything I was watching, all the videos, all the talks, everything is the battle cry of Texas. Remember the Alamo. And they
Right.
stop. And I'm like, wait, where's Goliad? Why are you erasing Goliad? And then I went to La Bahia and was talking to one of the ladies that works there. And she goes, well, Fannin actually was marching to the Alamo and had to turn back because they couldn't ford the river in time to get there. And the army caught up to him. And I was like, this is a totally different picture.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's a lot of that the reality has been lost to time, right? If you look at some of the actual Army documentation, the Texas Army documentation of that, it was really incompetent what they were doing. They were really they were trying to bring too much equipment with them. Had they gone light infantry and just gone, they could have made it and it would have been fine.
Right.
But
The cannon is what the
yeah,
problem is.
trying to bring all that cannon, all the food, all the shot, doing all that stuff. And I don't know, man. They and then to surrender. I made my mind up a long time ago, just knowing history and also, being in the Middle East and being in Central America. I'm not going to surrender. It's not going to happen. I think I would rather just deal with it right now than to have to go through, days, years, hours of torture and all that. We're going to do it right now. I think I of course I can't say whether I would actually do that or not. None of us can. But I think in law enforcement, a lot of times you have to make up your mind on what you're going to do before you actually face what's going to happen. So you get something in your head and you go, okay, this is something. If this happens, my best chance is to fight my way out of here. But those guys didn't know anything, right? They only knew what their parents told them, what their school marm told them, what their priest told them, and what their officers told them. They didn't have TV. They didn't have, much training on anything. They didn't understand cultural norms of different, nations and all that stuff. And so you do what you do, and then you get slaughtered.
Yeah, and one thing that doesn't make sense to me, and I cannot wrap my head around with Goliad, is the Mexican army is a Catholic, Mexico is a Catholic nation. And I was reading the marker, and they said on Easter Sunday they committed the massacre. And in my head, I'm going, wait a minute. Mexican people, Easter is a sacred holiday. how are they going to commit this atrocity on a sacred holiday? And and do that. I was like, dude, it's got to be a mistake. And they're like, no, they did it.
I don't know. I don't know how sacred. I don't know how their general viewed a sacred holiday, considering he was, he had concubines and all kinds of stuff with him. And also working 32 years law enforcement, one of the busiest days that we have on family disturbances is Easter.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of those, I guess maybe a bias, observation that I have. But a lot of them are Catholic that are just getting hammered, and they got their pinatas out, and they're doing their party games and stuff. And oh my God, here it goes. We have some areas around Travis County. It's like, oh God, are you working Easter? I hope I'm not working Easter. It's that much. Yeah.
Wow, I would have thought Thanksgiving would have been their day.
Easter's a big deal, man.
Wow.
But I don't, that's today, and we have convenience stores with lots of beer.
Right.
Back then it was a little different. But I think if the general told you to kill all those guys, I think they would just do it, because otherwise you get killed if you go against your officer's orders. So
yeah, I know. It's like my mind is like thinking our military mindset is, if order is immoral, you have the right to refuse. And I'm like, wasn't there any? And that's the part of me that I'm like, when I investigate, want to go back and fully investigate La Bahia's. Did you want to follow this order, or did you feel you had no choice? Because then it paints a whole nother picture.
Right. Yeah. It's a cool place, though. I really like it.
It is. And the first time I went there, they were closed. So I just walked the perimeter. And I was finding the little like windows that they have in the walls for the rifles. I would stick my hand in, and it's July, so what the temperature is like outside. I was like, I would hold my hand in there for a good while, because I was like, it's air conditioned.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've always wondered, is that natural because of the stone that the fort is made of, or is that paranormal? Something was there.
Well, maybe, but yeah, typically that stone and the stucco and all that stuff stays pretty cool, as long as it's, especially if they're doing the standard, making the walls with the hay on the inside of it. I forget what that's called, but they stuff adobe, and they do that. That's nice and cool on the inside. But, yeah.
Well, I'm glad I asked, because that's always was in the back of my mind too, going, I didn't want to go and say, oh, look, paranormal. And then it's like, oh, no, that's natural. Sorry.
Well, I mean, it could be something different, but most of those adobe structures are pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty nice. Yeah.
And so before I let you go, because it is getting late, do you have any advice that you want to give to veteran or new paranormal investigators out there?
Well, I could keep your mind open on what's going on. I see so many people immediately interpret things, and just collect that evidence, evaluate it, by eliminating the natural things that could be causing it. And then when you run out of that and you haven't explained it yet, then you have something paranormal, in my opinion. That and what we said earlier, as far as Don't dictate what you're going to do at your investigation before you get there. Get there, evaluate what you have, and then use your tools as best you can to eliminate any extra, light if you're doing video or audio. And I always tell people, man, buy a analog recorder and run your digital recorder and analog recorder at the same time and compare and contrast what it's picking up. And it could be picking up different things. So yeah. And be open to those experiments. So do different things.
Yeah. So if people want to get a hold of you to be a guest for an event, say, or ask you questions about, investigating, what's the best way you would like them to reach out to you?
You can go to my website, theparanormaldetective.com, or you could just email me straight away. It's greglawson@gmail.com. That's the best way. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all that. But
yeah. And I want to give you a chance because being an author myself, I know how important it is to plug those books.
Yeah.
And so you have, I think, is it 11 now?
Something like that. Yeah. I need to count them. I don't know.
So
I don't read them. People are like, have you ever read your book? I'm like, no, I've never read my book. I read it.
I haven't either.
I read it and I abandoned it. Yeah. So you can go on my author page on Amazon at Greg Lawson, or, you can, like I said, on my website, you go to books and they're all right there, and it'll take you straight over to Amazon or to the publisher, and you can order straight from there. Thanks for that though, man. Cause I have, my latest one, which is Messages from Mothman. Prior to that was Roswell, the after action report. And then I had Diaries of a Paranormalist, How to be a Paranormal Detective, and then Detecting Paranormal. Yeah. So those are the main ones.
Oh, I think it's 9. I think you have 9 out right now.
Well, yeah, and there's some that aren't still published. There's Zombie Advocacy that's not still published, but I get Zombie Economics and Zomfudo for the people that like zombie stuff. And then I have a couple of novels that were cathartic writings of stuff that I did when I was a mental health officer, called The Disorient Express and The Carrion, like carrion crow, like rotten meat on the side of the road carrion. It was a bad title for a book.
Well, that depends on it. You might find somebody who's sitting there right now going, let me go find that book. I hope that book's still in print. That sounds like something to read.
Yeah, that's my wife's favorite book. The Carrion's her favorite book. And everything I wrote in there is all true. I just changed the names and the locations because every one of those calls, those are real police calls that I went on. And I just had to, change it all up. But people look at me like, man, you're crazy. I'm like, no, I didn't make any of that up. That's all real stuff that really happened. So,
yeah.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on, and thank you to everyone in the chat room, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And one thing I kind of did this earlier when we started, but I'm going to do it a little different, is thank you, Greg, for everything you're doing for the paranormal community. It is seen. I see it, and so I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. It's an honor for me to be able to be a part of the paranormal community. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, so keep being you, and thank you so much, and maybe we'll get a chance to have you back on again.
All right, brother. Thanks, man.
All right. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving and a wonderful week, and enjoy the rest of the year 2025. Can you believe it's almost over?
Went by quick.
Yeah. Well, some people would say not quick enough. All right. Well, thank you, and good night, everyone.
Good night.